Imagine a tank that was considered the god of war. 70 tons of weight. Frontal armor, 180 millimeters thick. The Germans were convinced this wonder weapon would make them immortal. But why, just a few days after its debut, did the Wehrmacht command panic and issue a humiliating order? Avoid direct combat with Soviet tanks. What happened in the fog near the Polish village of Oględów, where an elite SS battalion vanished from the airwaves in just 4 minutes? Why did the vaunted Krupp steel behave not like metal, but like glass when struck by a Soviet shell, turning the crew inside into ground meat, even without penetration? In this video, we will dissect the anatomy of the most resounding failure of German engineering. You will learn how the King Tiger turned from hunter into prey, why their armor killed their own soldiers, and what terrifying piece of evidence Soviet engineers discovered when they cut open a captured trophy at the Kubinka proving grounds. Watch to the end. The truth about the invincible monster will shock you just as much as it shocked Hitler in 1944. The earth begins to tremble before the sound reaches your ears. This is not a metaphor. It is seismic activity. 700 horsepower of Maybach engines create a low-frequency vibration that transmits through the ground, through the tracks, straight into your spine. August 11th, 1944. Poland. Oględów. 4 o'clock in the morning. The fog here is so thick you want to push it aside with your hands like cotton wool. Visibility is absolute zero. You can't see a damn thing. In this white milk that creeps over the damp grass, death is hiding, and it weighs nearly 70 tons. We are lying in ambush. Heavy IS-2 tanks, 46 tons of Soviet steel, dug into the earth, camouflaged with branches and mud. Inside the turret, it is as tight as a coffin if you stuffed 4 men, a gun breech, and an ammo rack into a coffin. The air is stale and heavy. It smells of heated metal, burnt diesel, and the sour scent of male sweat that eats into tank coveralls permanently. The ventilation cannot keep up. We do not see the enemy, but we know he is coming. Intelligence reported yesterday, the Germans have new machines, King Tigers, frontal armor, 180 millimeters. 180. This is no longer a vehicle, it is a mobile pillbox. Lieutenant Oględów presses his forehead against the rubber pad of the sight. The rubber is damp and cold. He is not thinking about heroism. Heroism is for the newspapers. Here, in this iron box, a different kind of mathematics is at work. Oględów runs the numbers in his head. Effective firing range. The angle of impact. The velocity of the solid shot. 122 millimeters of our caliber against their Krupp steel. It is an equation with too many unknowns, where the price of a mistake is the crew instantly turning into charcoal. Do you hear them, Lieutenant? The loader's voice in the intercom sounds hollow, with the metallic scratch of static. I hear them, Oględów answers briefly. Heavy ones. Coming in low. The sound grows. It is not a roar, it is a drone. A steady mechanical rhythm that makes the ammo rack mountings inside our turret start to rattle. The German drivers are handling their machines arrogantly. They are not sneaking. They are confident in their invulnerability. The doctrine of the Reich's technical superiority in action. Why hide if you consider yourself the god of war? They think their armor is impenetrable. They are used to T-34s bouncing off them like peas. But they do not know that here, in the bushes, it is not a T-34 waiting for them. A sledgehammer is waiting for them. The driver, gripping the levers, looks through the narrow slit of the vision block. His hands, black with oil, are trembling slightly. This is not fear in the usual sense. It is adrenaline burning out the nerve endings. Physiology takes over. Pulse near 120. Pupils dilated. The organism prepares for impact. The tank is an extension of the body. The tracks are legs. The turret is the head. The gun is a fist. And now this organism is frozen, waiting for the command to kill. Armor piercing, Udalov commands. His voice is dry, devoid of intonation. The clank of the breech. 25 kilograms of death, the projectile and the separate loading casing, go into the breech. The loader works like an automaton, movements honed to automaticity. Grab the shell, ram it. Grab the casing, ram it. Close the breech. Click. Ready. In this cramped space, every extra movement costs seconds, and seconds cost lives. The smell of gunpowder from previous firings still hangs in the air, mixing with the smell of grease. The fog begins to thin, tearing into shreds. And then we see them. First, the silhouettes manifest. Huge, angular. They float out of the white haze like ghosts. Turrets turned straight ahead, barrels with muzzle brakes looking at the horizon. 6 machines. Moving in a column, not deploying into battle formation. Overconfidence is their cardinal sin and our main hope. German optics, the best in the world, are useless right now. In this fog, Zeiss lenses see nothing, but we see their flanks. "Look at that fat bastard," whispers the gunner, adjusting the hand wheel. "Cut the chatter," Udalov snaps. "Range? 1,000. Wait. 800. Wait." This is the hardest part. Waiting for the monster to get within knife-fighting range. We have no right to miss. We have no right to a ricochet. 122 millimeters must enter the metal in such a way as to transfer all their kinetic energy inside, to rip the welds, to force the armor to flow like water. This is the physics of destruction. The ground under the tracks of our IS-2 trembles harder. It feels like the air itself is vibrating. The clanking of German tracks is now clearly audible, a heavy, grinding roll of metal over Polish black earth. They are parading. They think this land already belongs to them. Inside our tank, a silence falls in which you can hear the clock ticking on the dashboard and the loader breathing heavily. Fear is gone. There is only cold calculation. The reticle of the sight catches the side of the lead Tiger. The crosshairs settle just below the turret, where the ammo rack hides behind the armor. Death is there. Udalov feels sweat trickling down his back in a cold stream. He is a surgeon about to lance a boil, and his scalpel weighs 25 kilograms. "Range 500!" the gunner shouts. The silhouette of the German tank fills the entire sight. Details are visible. Spare tracks on the turret, Zimmerit coating on the armor, closed hatches. The crews inside feel safe. They are drinking ersatz coffee, listening to the radio, and believing in the genius of German engineers. In a second, their faith will collide with the reality of Soviet caliber. "Fire!" The hand presses the trigger. The IS-2 shudders with its entire 46-ton body. This is not a shot. It is a hammer blow on an anvil. Flame from the muzzle brake tears the fog apart, instantly evaporating the moisture. The recoil of the gun is so powerful, it feels like the turret is about to be torn off the ring. The casing falls to the floor with a ringing crash, and acrid smoke instantly fills the fighting compartment. In that same second, time tears. The shell, leaving the barrel at a speed of 800 meters per second, covers 500 meters in less than 1 heartbeat. Physics takes over. The kinetic energy of the BR-471 solid shot meets German armor. Impact. The lead Tiger stumbles. A shower of sparks, the shriek of tearing metal audible even through helmets. The solid shot does not just pierce the armor, it breaks the very structure of the matter. The turret of the German giant, weighing tens of tons, is thrown up and twisted to the side like a lid off a pot. The explosion of the ammunition inside turns the invulnerable machine into a volcano. Fire bursts from all hatches, turning the crew into steam and ash in a fraction of a second. "Target destroyed!" screams the gunner, and there is no triumph in his voice, only the vicious joy of a man who has just killed a dragon. "Next!" "Load!" commands Udalov. The illusion of silence and fog is shattered. Now there is only thunder, smoke, and burning iron. The race with death has begun. The first tiger is burning, but the others are coming behind it. And here begins the race with death, where physics holds the stopwatch, not man. Inside the IS-2 turret, time compresses and stretches simultaneously. After the shot comes the most terrifying pause in a tanker's life: reloading. 122 millimeters is a death sentence for the enemy, but it is also a curse for the crew. Separate loading. This means you first have to shove the heavy projectile into the breech, and then the casing with the charge. On the proving ground, the standard is 2 to 3 rounds per minute. In combat, when hands slip with sweat and lungs are clogged with powder gases, every cycle feels like an eternity. 20, 30 seconds of helplessness. In these seconds, you are a target. "Shell!" rasps the loader. He strains his back, pulling the 20-kilogram steel slug from the rack. Muscles ache, but adrenaline dulls the pain. Metal slams onto the tray. The rammer works roughly, with a clang. The casing flies in next. The breech block, a massive steel slab, slams shut with a sound like a crypt lid falling. "Ready!" The gunner does not take his eyes off the sight. In the eyepiece, you can see the German column losing formation. The knocked-out lead tank has blocked the road, turning into a blazing torch. The remaining 5 machines start to twitch. Their formation breaks. Heavy, clumsy carcasses try to drive off the road, turn around, find cover. But in the Polish mud, under the weight of 70 tons, they become cows on ice. The Germans are in a panic. They do not see where death came from. The fog and smoke from the first explosion hide our position. Their turrets start spinning chaotically, barrels searching for a target, prowling the horizon like blind tentacles. But they are too late. Number 2, same reference point. Traverse right 005, commands Udalov. The lieutenant sees their confusion. This is the moment when the crew's psychology breaks faster than the transmission. They are used to being hunters. They are used to Russians scattering at the sight of their silhouettes. Now their worldview is collapsing. They are the game. Fire! The second blow. The D-25T spits fire again. The shell stitches through 300 meters of emptiness. The target is the flank of the second tank, which carelessly began a turn, exposing its most vulnerable projection to the strike. Hit. This is not just a penetration. It is a catastrophe of confined space. The BR-471 solid shot smashes through 80 millimeters of side armor, not noticing the resistance. The kinetic energy of the shell upon entering the interior converts into a monstrous pressure spike. The crew does not even have time to realize they are dead. The shockwave inside the tank turns human organs into jelly. The turret is torn from the ring. The multi-ton structure jumps up, does a flip in the air, and crashes down next to the chassis. "Hit! Turret blown off!" shouts the gunner. His voice breaks into a falsetto, but his hands keep turning the adjustment wheels. Cold reason works separately from emotions. 4 left. Now the Germans see the flash. They open return fire. 88mm shells start tearing up the earth around us. Short, long. Shrapnel drums on the armor like hail. The ringing is so loud it plugs your ears even through the helmet. But they are firing blindly, at random, into the bushes where the tracers came from. Their vaunted optics are useless against camouflage and fear. "Faster!" Oględów pounds his fist on the breech. "Faster, damn it!" The loader is working at the limit of human capability. His face is black with soot, sweat tracks running down his cheeks.
He is no longer a human. He is an ammunition feeding mechanism. Grab, lift, ram, casing, breach, click. This rhythm is the only thing keeping them alive. Third shot. Range closed to 300 meters. At this distance, it is impossible to miss. The shell hits the joint of the hull and turret of the third Tiger. The weld bursts. The armor splits like a rotten nut. Fragments of their own armor become shrapnel for the crew. The machine flares up instantly. The detonation of the ammo rack tears the hull apart from the inside, throwing columns of flame as high as a 5-story building. 4 minutes. Only 4 minutes have passed since the first shot. In that time, 3 King Tigers, the pride of the SS tank forces, have turned into scrap metal. "Fourth one going into the hollow," reports the gunner. "He won't get away. Armor piercing." The remaining tanks try to retreat in reverse. But the driver's visibility in a Tiger is atrocious, and in the smoke and panic, he sees nothing. One of the machines slides a track into a ditch and gets stuck. The engine roars, spewing black smoke, tracks clawing the earth, but the 70-ton behemoth is sitting on its belly. It is immobilized. It is dead. Oględów coolly selects this stationary target. "Flank! Under the turret! Fire!" The shell enters exactly under the turret ring. The tank shudders, freezes, and a second later, thick, greasy smoke starts pouring from all cracks. The crew does not get out. The hatches are jammed by the hull deformation. They will burn alive along with their miracle weapon. The 6th tank tries to turn its front to use its frontal armor, those same 180mm they prayed to, but it is too slow. The IS-2, despite its size, manages to fire first. The shell hits the gun mantlet. The Tiger's gun looks at the sky as if asking for mercy. The aiming mechanism is destroyed. The tank is blind and disarmed. The next shot finishes it off. Silence descends on the battlefield. But it is not the silence of the morning. It is the ringing silence after a storm. 6 bonfires burn on the road. The smell of burnt meat, melting rubber, and red-hot metal clogs the lungs. Oględów throws open the hatch. Cool air hits his face, tasting sweet after the fumes of the fighting compartment. He looks at his watch. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. A platoon of heavy tanks destroyed completely. The Germans didn't even have time to properly traverse their turrets. Down below, near the burnt carcasses, something is popping. Shells cooking off in the ammo racks of the destroyed machines. Fireworks in honor of the victory of brute force and precise calculation. No magic, no Superman. Just 122 millimeters of Soviet physics, multiplied by velocity and multiplied by 0 German arrogance. The crew is silent. No one yells hurrah. The loader slides down the turret wall to the floor, greedily gulping air. His hands are shaking so badly he cannot unbutton his collar. The gunner wipes his face with a rag, leaving dirty streaks. This is not a triumph. It is just heavy, dirty work that was done well. But the air around has already changed. Over there, behind the hills, in the German headquarters, they don't know the details yet. but they already feel the void in the ether. 6 call signs are silent. The myth of invulnerability has collapsed, crumbled to dust on this dirty Polish road. And now they have to live with it, or die. Udalov lowers himself back into the hatch. "Load up," he says quietly. This isn't over. They know the enemy will return. A wounded beast is the most dangerous. The second wave will be angrier, but the first round went to the sledgehammer. Silence hangs in the radio waves of the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion. It is not the calm silence of waiting, but a dead, static hiss that is scarier than any scream. The German radio operator in the command half-track repeats the call signs of the first company for the 10th time. In response, only the crackle of static and emptiness. 6 crews, 30 men, 400 tons of the newest equipment, all vanished from the comms frequencies in 240 seconds. In the officer's headphones, it is not the voice of the first group's commander sounding, but the sentence for their technical pride. In the headquarters deployed in the rear, a stupor sets in for a moment. This cannot be. This contradicts the entire logic of their war. The King Tiger was created as an absolute. 180 millimeters of frontal armor were supposed to make it immortal. German officers look at maps where blue arrows draw indestructible wedges, but reality makes its corrections with the red marker of burning metal. The myth of invulnerability they built so carefully has collapsed, colliding with the brute kinetic energy of the Soviet 12th caliber. Hauptmann Schaefer, the battalion commander, shakes off the numbness first. Stupor is replaced by cold, calculating rage. This is a professional insult. The Russians didn't just destroy the advanced platoon, they spat in the face of the entire German engineering school. Emotions shut down, giving way to tactical algorithms. If a frontal attack in the fog didn't work, then the conditions of the problem must be changed. The order sounds short and harsh, like a gunshot. Destroy. Grind into dust. No prisoners. The engines of 14 King Tigers roar to life almost simultaneously. The rumble is such that windows vibrate in houses kilometers away. The main force is coming. The second wave. Now they won't be sneaking in the fog. The sun is rising higher, the wind is dispersing the haze, and this plays into the hands of the German gunners. Their trump card is Zeiss optics and the long-barreled 88mm gun. They need space. They need a distance of 2 kilometers, where their shells penetrate IS-2 armor, but the Russian return fire is not yet accurate enough. The column moves out. 14 machines. That's almost 1,000 tons of alloy steel crawling over the Polish black earth. The earth groans and sags under tracks 80 centimeters wide. Transmissions howl from the overload, but the drivers drive the machines forward. They are in a hurry. They want revenge. In the heads of the German tankers right now, there is no fear, only anger and arrogance. Arrogance is the fuel this battalion runs on. They convince themselves the first group perished by accident, maybe a minefield, maybe a lucky point-blank ambush by anti-tank artillery. They refuse to believe that a Soviet tank can win a duel one-on-one. They still consider themselves hunters who simply stumbled, but are now ready to tear the prey apart. The column passes the site of the first group's demise. The picture that opens up from the vision slits should cool hot heads, but it only fuels the rage. 6 carcasses are still smoking with greasy black smoke. Turrets are torn off and lying in the mud like the severed heads of giants. The metal of one tank's hull is torn as if it were made of cardboard. You can see the innards of the machine. Burnt breeches, tangled wires, fused ammunition.
The German commanders see this, but their conclusions are wrong. They see in this not the power of Soviet weapons, but a challenge. "We will avenge this," thinks the collective mind on the radio. They do not understand that they are seeing not an accident, but a system. They are looking at the work of 122 millimeters, but their brains block the realization that their armor is no longer protection.
Schaefer gives the order to deploy into a wedge battle formation.
Now they occupy the whole field. Distance between vehicles, 50 meters. Turrets turn, scanning the horizon. They are looking for IS-2 silhouettes. They want to force a battle on their terms. Long range, open terrain, a duel of optics. Gunners glued to their sights, fingers on electric triggers. They are ready to kill. The second wave is a wounded beast that has become twice as dangerous. If there was carelessness in the first attack, now there is the cold concentration of killers. They move slowly, methodically probing every bush, every fold of the terrain with their barrels. 14 guns look toward where they think the Russians are hiding, but the field before them is empty. Only the wind chases smoke from the burning wrecks. There are no Russians at the old position. This causes a new fit of fury in the Germans. The enemy did not accept battle. The enemy vanished. This breaks their script. They rolled out all their power onto the field, prepared for a gladiatorial fight. But the arena is empty. The feeling that they are striking emptiness with a sledgehammer is irritating. Tension grows. Drivers nervously jerk levers, making the multi-ton machines yaw. Tank commanders stick out of hatches, trying to spot the enemy with binoculars, risking a sniper's bullet. They are sure the Russians got scared, that seeing such an armada, the IS-2 crews abandoned their positions and retreated into the forest. This overconfidence plays a cruel joke on them again. They interpret a tactical maneuver as cowardice. They think victory is just a matter of time and kilometers covered. Schaefer commands, "Forward! To the forest!" The armada begins moving toward the green wall of trees on the horizon, toward where the road narrows and goes into the thicket. They are heading straight into a bottleneck, confident their frontal armor will withstand any blow. They forget the main law of war. Armor protects only against a shell, but it does not protect against stupidity. Heavy tracks grind the soil, leaving deep scars on the earth. The roar of engines drowns out all sounds of the world. 14 steel monsters advance on the forest inevitably, like an avalanche. They do not know this forest is not empty. They do not know their movement is being tracked. They think they are predators, but in reality, they are a herd of bison being driven into a trap. Anger veils their eyes. The desire to avenge their burnt comrades shuts off the instinct of self-preservation. They want blood, and they will get it. Only it will be their own blood, mixed with transmission oil. The forest ahead is silent, but this silence is taut as a string ready to snap. Among the trees, in the shadows, invisible to German optics, diesels are already running. The Soviet tankers did not run. They just changed the plane of battle. The geometry of death has already been redrawn, and the new strike vectors are aimed not at impenetrable foreheads, but at vulnerable flanks. But the Germans will learn about this only when it is too late to change anything. For now, they roar triumphantly with their engines, closing the distance to their doom. Lieutenant Udalov looks through the periscope and sees not just tanks. He sees force vectors. 14 barrels of 88mm caliber are looking in his direction. It is an equation with a lethal outcome. To engage in a frontal shootout with such an armada is not bravery. It is suicide. The mathematics of war is ruthless. The density of enemy fire is such that even ricochets will turn his platoon into a pile of twisted iron in 2 minutes. The frontal armor of the IS-2 is strong, but it is not infinite. In the cramped, sweat-soaked fighting compartment, a decision is made. The only correct decision in this situation. Geometry. Tank combat is not standing still. It is chess weighing 46 tons, where the board consists of mud, trees, and hills. To kill a dragon, you don't hit it in the forehead covered with the thickest scales. You have to come from the side, where the hide is thinner. "Platoon, listen to my order!" Udalov's voice on the air sounds harsh, breaking through the static crackle. "Split up! 3rd and 4th, stay on the edge. Work as beacons. Your task is to live and make noise. 5th, 6th, with me. We're going into the forest. We'll crack their sides." This is a cruel trade. 2 crews remain as bait. They are pawns that must pin the attention of the enemy's queens. Their task is to make the Germans believe the main Russian forces are here, straight ahead. They must shoot, maneuver, show themselves, forcing 14 King Tigers to turn their turrets in one direction. This will create tunnel vision for the enemy. And while the Germans are looking at the lure, Udalov's strike group will make its knights move. The IS-2 engine roars, spitting a cloud of blue smoke. The driver yanks the levers back. Tracks bite into the earth, turning the hull. The tank leaves the road and crashes into the green wall of the forest. Driving a heavy tank through a dense forest is violence against nature and machinery. There are no roads here. There are only directions and obstacles. Ancient pines and oaks are not barriers for a 46-ton machine, but annoying hindrances. The tank's fender strikes a tree trunk. The impact is felt through the entire hull. The screech of tearing bark and the crack of wood drown out even the engine roar. The tree leans, groans, and crashes under the tracks, snapping like a dry matchstick. The tank crushes it underneath, grinding branches into dust, pressing the trunk into the soft soil. Inside the machine, this hell feels different. The crew is thrown from side to side. Udalov holds on to the commander's cupola handle so hard his knuckles turn white. Visibility, 0. Periscopes are plastered with leaves, falling branches, and dirt. The driver drives the machine practically by touch, listening to the commander's orders. "Left! More left!" "Watch the idler wheel!" screams Udalov. If a log gets between the road wheels and the track, the tank could throw a track. Losing a track in the forest during combat is death. The crew will turn into infantry, and the tank into an immobile pillbox that the Germans will flank and burn. That is why the driver works the levers with jewelry-like precision, despite the roughness of the situation. He feels the machine with his back, feels every slip of the tracks on damp roots. A branch as thick as an arm hits the turret armor, knocking off the antenna. The sound is like the tank was hit with a sledgehammer. But they move forward. They cut a swath through the thicket, moving parallel to the German column. Meanwhile, on the forest edge, the show begins. The bait group opens fire. 2 IS-2s fire shots, intentionally unmasking themselves. Explosions kick up fountains of earth in front of the German column's nose. The plan works. The German commanders take the bait. In their binoculars, they see flashes on the edge. Aha! There they are, the Russians, hiding behind trees. The predator instinct takes over caution. Hauptmann Schaefer commands an attack on the revealed targets. 14 turrets begin to turn slowly, with a hydraulic whine toward the 2 Soviet tanks. The hulls of the Tigers turn too. The entire German armada focuses its attention on a narrow sector of the front. They forget about the flanks. In their arrogant consciousness, the thought does not fit that Russians can pull off a complex tactical maneuver in such a windbreak. Germans consider the forest impassable for heavy equipment. For their Tigers, this is indeed true. Long barrels will snag on trees, overloaded suspension won't hold up. Transmissions will burn. They judge the enemy by themselves, and this is their fatal mistake. The Soviet IS-2 is shorter. Its gun has less barrel overhang. Its V2 diesel is reliable and torquey, like a tractor engine, which it essentially is. It is made from mud and windbreaks. Udalov's group reaches position. The road is now to their side. Through the thinning trees, the flanks of the German tanks are visible. The picture that opens in the sight is ideal from the point of view of the geometry of death. The German tanks are stretched out in a line. Their turrets are turned away from the forest by 90 degrees, looking at the bait. They have exposed the weakest spot to the blow. The side hull armor of the King Tiger, 80 millimeters. Turret side, also 80. Vertical plates, no rational angles of slope like on the front. For the 122 millimeter BR-471 shell, this is no longer armor. It is cardboard. From a distance of 400 meters, the kinetic energy of the Soviet solid shot will stitch through both sides, if it doesn't meet the engine or ammo rack on the way. Udalov checks the firing sector. A branch is blocking the view. "Driver, short! Back up half a meter!" The tank jerks backward. The branch leaves the field of view. Now it's clear. In the crosshairs of the sight, a cross on the side of the German machine. A black and white Balkenkreuz, painted with German pedantry. The perfect target. In the headset, the voice of the bait commander is heard. "Holding them! They're pushing like rams. Won't last long, Udalov. Hurry up!" The Germans have already started ranging on the bait. 88 millimeter shells shred the forest around the two brave crews. The count goes by seconds. If they delay, the Germans will suppress the distraction group and become masters of the situation again. But the trap has already snapped shut. The bolt is slid home. The IS-2 crew feels this moment. Fear leaves, giving way to cold, professional excitement. This is the moment of truth, when you realize you outplayed the enemy not with strength, but with mind. You forced him to turn his back on you. You forced him to believe a lie. And now you will punish him for his gullibility. The loader is already holding a shell ready, even though the gun is loaded. He knows a frantic pace is about to start. "Ready, Commander. Target in sight. Flank. Range 400. The forest smells of crushed pine needles, damp earth, and hot diesel. In a moment, the smell of burnt gunpowder will be added. The silence of the forest, broken only by the roar of engines, will now be torn apart by a thunder that will put an end to the ambitions of the wonder weapon. Udalov takes a deep breath. Finger on the intercom button. "At the fascist invaders! Fire!" This is not just a command. It is pulling the lever of a guillotine. The IS-2 in the forest is not a tank. It is a predator, leaping from the dark at the victim's throat. And the victim won't even have time to understand where death came from. The forest spits death. The volley of Soviet tanks from ambush sounds not like a shot, but like a mountain collapsing. At a range of 400 meters, the shell's ballistics are practically flat. Corrections for wind and drift are not needed. The gunner just needs to put the crosshairs on the huge, flat side of the German machine and pull the trigger. 80 millimeters of King Tiger side armor are positioned vertically. No rational slope angles that could provoke a ricochet. For a 122 millimeter blunt-nosed solid shot, this is a gift. A blow to the side is a blow to the liver. It paralyzes and kills instantly. The first shell hits the side of a tiger moving in the center of the column. The effect is monstrous. The kinetic energy of the impact is such that the armor plate is not just pierced, it is smashed out in chunks, flying into the fighting compartment like shrapnel. Inside the tank at this moment, hellish compression occurs.
The crew, which a second ago was aiming at the bait on the edge, turns into biological mass smeared over the instruments. Detonation of the ammo rack follows instantly. The huge turret, weighing several tons, jumps up like a champagne cork and falls onto the engine compartment, crushing it flat. "Got the first one!" The gunner's scream drowns in the roar of the next shot from the neighboring IS-2. Chaos begins in the German column. The formation breaks instantly. Tiger commanders scream into the radio, but their screams are drowned out by the panic cries of those already burning. They realize they are being hit from the flank, but the inertia of thinking and the inertia of 70-ton machines play against them. To turn the front toward the threat, a Tiger needs time. Time they do not have. The turret rotates slowly. A full rotation takes tens of seconds, which, in battle, cost lives. Turning the hull is even harder. In the Polish mud, churned up by tracks, the heavy machines become clumsy hippos. One of the German tanks tries to make a pivot turn. The driver gives full throttle, locking one track. The Maybach engine roars at redline, choking from the load. But you can't cheat physics. 70 tons of weight press the machine into the sodden soil. The track slips, throwing up fountains of mud, but there is no traction. The tank doesn't turn. It just digs itself in, exposing its side to the next blow.
"Hit the drive sprocket," commands Udalov. "Don't let him turn."
Another IS-2 shell hits the running gear. The road wheel shatters into pieces. The track link snaps and slides onto the ground like a snake. Inertia spins the immobilized machine sideways, opening the ideal angle for the kill shot. The next shot punches through the side, just below the turret. Flash! Tongues of flame resembling a blowtorch shoot out of the hatches. Gunpowder charges are burning inside. The temperature there right now is such that aluminum melts. This is not a battle. It is a methodical execution in a shooting gallery. The Soviet tankers work rhythmically, like on a factory assembly line for metal recycling. Shot, recoil, ejection of casing, loading. Shot. In 10 minutes of combat, the pride of the Panzerwaffe turns into a graveyard. 10 machines destroyed. Some burn brightly like torches. From others pours thick, suffocating smoke, testifying that the crew is burning slowly. In the German ether, hysteria. "Contact right! We're burning! Schmidt is killed! Retreating! Back!" The remaining Tigers try to back up, to hide behind the smoke of their burning comrades, but visibility from the tank is limited to narrow slits, and rear-view mirrors were smashed by shrapnel long ago. One of the retreating tanks crashes its rear into the burning wreck of another machine with full force. The impact shakes both giants. The engine stalls. The crew tries to start the motor. The starter screeches, but the multi-ton carcass is dead. A second later, 122 millimeters of argumentation arrives in the side of this stationary target. Lieutenant Udalov watches the slaughter through the commander's panorama. His face is stone. No pity. The Germans came here in these machines to kill. They believed in their impunity. Now they are paying the bill.
"Number 3, finish off the one on the far left. He's still moving." Udalov's voice in the throat microphone sounds mundane, as if asking to pass the salt. The gun of the neighboring IS-2 traverses. Shot. The shell hits exactly at the joint of the turret and hull. The turret skews, jamming tight. A figure in black coveralls, engulfed in flames, tumbles out of the open loader's hatch and falls into the mud. The heaviness of the German tanks, which was supposed to be their advantage, became their sentence. Overloaded suspension does not allow maneuvering. Barrels that are too long catch on bushes when trying to turn. The complex transmission breaks under the stress of combat. German engineering created a monster for the ideal conditions of a proving ground. But here, in the mud, under fire from heavy Soviet calibers, this complexity became fragility. "Cease fire," commands Udalov when the last silhouette disappears into the smoke or freezes forever. "Look around." "Reload." Heavy silence hangs in the forest, broken only by the crackle of burning metal and dull pops inside the knocked-out tanks. The air is blue with exhaust fumes and gunpowder smoke. Udalov wipes sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his coveralls. He looks at the battlefield. 10 bonfires, 10 monuments to Hitler's collapsed hope. The remaining 4 machines crawled away, snapping back with fire, but they no longer pose a threat. They are broken psychologically. The crews saw their immortal comrades turn into scrap metal with one hit. This fear will now sit in them deeper than a piece of shrapnel. "Commander, we have 3 shells left," reports the loader. Fatigue is heard in his voice, but it is the pleasant fatigue of a man who just unloaded a wagon of coal and knows the job is done well. "Enough," answers Udalov. "We did the main work. Now it's up to the gods of war." He knows this is just the beginning of the end for the Germans. Tomorrow they will try again, but today their spine is broken. The simplicity and reliability of the Soviet sledgehammer smashed the Swiss watch mechanism of German tank building. And that sound of a broken mechanism is the best music for a tanker. The tanks of Udalov's group slowly, in reverse, pull deeper into the forest, changing position. You cannot stay in a spot that has already been ranged. War is movement, and those who stayed standing in the field will now become part of the Polish landscape, a rusting reminder of what happens when technical pride collides with the laws of physics and the will of a Russian soldier. August 13th, 1944, begins not with sunrise, but with the wail of Jericho trumpet sirens. The sky over Oględów turns black with Ju-87 dive bombers. The Germans are throwing everything they have onto the scales. If they can't break the Soviet defense with the quality of steel, they try to crush it with the mass of TNT. The earth under the IS-2 tracks ceases to be a support. It turns into a boiling substance. Explosions of aerial bombs lift hundreds of cubic meters of soil into the air, mixing Polish black earth with shrapnel and hot iron. The air becomes dense as water. Shockwaves hit the tank armor like sledgehammers of invisible giants. Inside the machine, even through the helmet and diesel roar, this hellish drumbeat is audible. Shrapnel slashing the armor, knocking off external equipment, smashing headlights and observation devices. "Batches down!" screams Udalov. "Driver, don't stop! Movement is life!" Static here means death. If you stop, aviation or artillery, which plows squares with German pedantry, will cover you. The IS-2, this 46-ton mastodon, is forced to dance a waltz under fire. Dash forward, short stop, shot, retreat back, turn. Heavy machines maneuver among craters that are still smoking with heat. As soon as the aviation goes for a second pass, a steel avalanche spills out of the smokescreen. The Germans are no longer playing duels. They are going all in. The remnants of the heavy tank battalion, surviving King Tigers, and 24 Panthers enter the battle. This is combined arms combat in its most terrifying manifestation. Chaos. The density of fire is such that it seems the air consists more of metal than oxygen. "Tanks, straight ahead! Range 600! There's a lot of them!" The gunner's voice trembles with tension, but his hands do their job. Panthers move faster than Tigers. They try to close the distance, get close for point-blank fire, use their mobility.
It is a pack of wolves trying to maul a bear. But the bear is armed with a 122mm caliber. Armor piercing! At the lead panther! An IS-2 shot from this distance at a medium panther is excessive cruelty. The shell hits the upper glacis plate. For the German cat, this is a death sentence without the right of appeal. The armor is smashed like a rotten board. The kinetic strike tears the turret off the ring, throwing it several meters back. The tank hull continues to roll forward by inertia for a couple more seconds, turning into a flaming hearse, before freezing. But there are too many of them. Left and right, flashes of German guns flare up. Shells ricochet off the cast frontal armor of the IS-2 with a screech that bursts eardrums. Sparks shower in fountains. One shell hits the gun mantlet but doesn't penetrate, leaving a deep gouge, a scar on a fighter's face. "Left flank! Tiger!" From behind a burning panther crawls the carcass of a king tiger. He tries to push through the defense with mass. He comes straight on, breaking bushes and crushing craters with tracks. His gun looks straight at us. There is no time here for complex calculations. This is a fight at point-blank range.
A duel with pistols in a phone booth. Only instead of pistols, howitzer calibers.
Oględów reacts instantly. "Driver, shortstop! Gunner, hit the mantlet!" Shot. The thunder in the enclosed space of the turret deafens. The breech recoils, ejecting a smoking casing. Powder gases eat the eyes. Throat tickles. The fan hums strainedly, trying to pull out the poison, but can't keep up. Hit. The IS-2 shell strikes the joint of the Tiger's turret, an explosion of monstrous force. The German tank is enveloped in a cloud of dust and smoke. When the wind carries away the curtain, the result is visible. The Tiger's gun looks at the ground like a broken arm. The turret is jammed. The crew, concussed and blinded, tries to leave the machine, but a burst from the coaxial DT machine gun drives them back into the burning iron, or leaves them lying on the armor like rag dolls. The battle breaks down into dozens of local skirmishes. There is no unified front. There are only islands of resistance in a sea of fire and smoke. Soviet tankers use folds in the terrain, hiding behind the enemy's destroyed equipment. Burning wrecks of German machines become barricades. "Load! High explosive! Infantry incoming!" screams Oględów. The Germans throw grenadiers into battle, trying to cut off our tanks from cover. A high-explosive fragmentation shell weighing 25 kilograms is a terrible weapon against manpower. The explosion of such a suitcase leaves a crater in which you can hide a passenger car. The shockwave breaks bones at a distance of tens of meters. After the shot, the attacking chain of infantry is simply blown away like dry leaves by the wind. But the main target is tanks. 7 more King Tigers meet their end on this day. They burn gloomily and heavily, emitting black, greasy smoke from burning rubber tires and synthetic oil. One of them takes a hit in the side from a range of just 200 meters. The shell passes through, knocking out the engine on the other side. The machine dies instantly, turning into a pile of scrap metal worth millions of Reichsmarks. The ground around Oględów is covered in metal. IS-2 tracks slip on casings, on fragments of tracks, on pieces of armor. Maneuvering becomes difficult not because of mud, but because of the corpses of machinery. The German attack begins to choke. They lose tempo. They lose arrogance. Psychology breaks again. Seeing their Panthers burn and Tigers explode, German crews begin to back away. They understand that it is impossible to break through this wall of fire. Soviet tankers are not just fighting back, they are grinding the attackers with the methodical nature of a meat grinder. "Retreating! The bastards are retreating!" shouts the loader, shoving another shell into the breach. His hands are bloody, skinned on the mechanisms. but he doesn't even feel it. The Germans snap back with fire, but the formation has crumbled. The attack turns into flight. King tigers, these proud predators, now pitifully back up toward the saving forest, leaving their brethren to burn out on the field. The battle dies down as suddenly as it began. The roar is replaced by the crackle of fires and distant explosions. The field in front of Oględow's platoon positions resembles a giant scrapyard. 20 burnt and knocked out tanks, twisted guns, torn off turrets, unraveled tracks. Oględów opens the hatch. Silence presses on the ears harder than the roar. Blue haze hangs in the air. It smells of burning TNT and death. This smell is impossible to confuse with anything. It is the smell of victory, but a heavy, rough victory, without fanfares. A victory earned with sweat, blood, and kilograms of explosives. The crew is silent. No strength for talk. Only heavy breathing and ringing in the ears. They survived a storm. And not just survived. They became a breakwater against which the German steel wave crashed. Somewhere in the distance, the drone of departing German planes is heard. They also realized there is nothing to catch here. On the ground near Oględów, physics turned out to be on the side of the Soviet soldier, and this physics was more convincing than any propaganda. The battlefield near Oględów slowly cools. The smoke disperses, revealing a panorama of the graveyard of German ambitions. But among the twisted, charred wrecks resembling skeletons of prehistoric monsters stands one special trophy. Turret number 502. A king tiger that didn't burn. Its crew fled, abandoning the machine when they realized they were in a trap. The engine stalled or nerves failed. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that now this 70-ton monster belongs not to the Wehrmacht, but to the main armored directorate of the Red Army. Now the war moves from dirty Polish fields to the silence of proving grounds. The machine is loaded onto a railway platform. It is a whole special operation. The trophy is so heavy that platforms sag, and couplings groan from the overload. Destination: Kubinka. Here, far from the front, Soviet engineers prepare scalpels to perform an autopsy on the German miracle. Here there is no room for emotions, fear, or hatred, only physics, materials science, and ballistics. At the proving ground, Tiger number 502 looks like an alien. Huge, angular, covered in zimmerit, a ribbed coating against magnetic mines that gives it the look of a sick, peeling reptile. People in lab coats and grease-stained coveralls walk around it. They measure armor thickness, tap it with hammers, take metal samples. 180 millimeters in the front, says one engineer, recording data on a clipboard. His voice is dry, devoid of surprise. Turret side, 80. Slope angle of the upper glacis plate, 50 degrees. On paper, these figures look impressive. German designers created a fortress. By their calculations, this armor should withstand the blow of any existing anti-tank gun. But war is not paper. War is a test of strength. Running trials begin. The first unpleasant circumstance for the supermen comes to light. The tank's transmission is an engineering dead end. It is overcomplicated, capricious, and completely uncalculated for a weight of 68 tons. Final drives crumble after a few dozen kilometers of driving on rough terrain. The engine overheats. The turret rotation mechanism jams on a slope. The tank, which looked like perfection on blueprints, in reality turns out to be a barely mobile pillbox, capable of fighting only in ideal conditions. But the main exam is ahead. Shelling. An IS-2 rolls out to the firing position. Range 1,000 meters. Target, the frontal detail of the captured Tiger. Soviet engineers want to know the truth. Is German steel really invulnerable,
Or is this another bluff by Dr. Goebbels?
Fire!
The 122mm shell strikes the turret front. The sound of impact differs from what tankers hear in battle. Here, in the silence of the proving ground, it sounds like the sharp, dry crack of breaking ice. The engineers approach the target. What they see becomes a sentence for all German metallurgy of the end of the war. The shell did not pierce the armor through in the classical sense. It did something worse. Deep, ragged cracks ran across the armor around the point of impact. A huge chunk of metal just chipped off like a piece of plaster. "Look here!" The chief engineer runs a finger along the spall. Edges are sharp, granular. "This isn't armor, it's glass." Inside the tank, the picture is even scarier. The backside of the armor, unable to withstand the kinetic impact, spalled off inward. Fragments of its own armor, weighing several kilograms each, turned the fighting compartment into a meat grinder. Even if the shell doesn't punch through the Tiger, the crew dies from the so-called spalling effect. The shockwave passes through the metal and tears off the inner layer, turning it into shrapnel. "Chemical analysis ready?" asks the test director. "Yes, sir." "What's in it?" "No molybdenum, chromium, minimum, high carbon content." That's it. The answer. Germany is suffocating in the blockade. They no longer have access to deposits of alloying additives. To compensate for the lack of molybdenum, which gives steel toughness and elasticity, German metallurgists are forced to over-harden the armor. They make it hard, extremely hard, but brittle. This is a fatal mistake. The Soviet IS-2 armor is softer, more viscous. Upon impact, it deforms, flows, but doesn't crack. The German armor of the King Tiger does not hold dynamic loads. Under the blow of a blunt-nosed Soviet shell weighing 25 kilograms, it simply bursts along the welds. The next shot is taken at the hole side. The result is predictable and terrible. Through and through penetration. The entry hole is neat. The exit, a torn-out piece of metal the size of a head. The shell passed through, wrecking everything inside along the way. "Conclusion?" asks someone from the commission. "Overrated," answers the engineer, closing the folder. "Metal quality is low. Design is overweight. Protection from large-caliber shells is not ensured due to material brittleness." The myth of invulnerability crumbles to atoms right here on the proving ground. The wonder weapon turned out to be a colossus with feet of clay, or rather, brittle steel feet devoid of alloying additives. German perfectionism collided with resource hunger and lost. They tried to make a Stradivarius violin to hammer nails with it, but forgot that war needs a sledgehammer. Soviet engineers look at the Tiger without piety. For them, it is now just a pile of scrap, a textbook on how not to build tanks in conditions of total war. This monster was created to scare with its appearance, but you can't scare physics. The kinetic energy of the D-25T shell found a weak spot in the crystal lattice of German steel. In the report that will lay on Stalin's desk, it will be written dryly, "The Tiger B tank does not possess an overwhelming advantage over domestic heavy IS-2 tanks. Armor protection, despite great thickness, has low survivability due to metal brittleness." This is the end of the legend. In Oględów, this myth was killed by Udalov's tankers. In Kubinka, engineers wrote out the death certificate, certified by the seal of the metallurgy laboratory. Simplicity, multiplied by reliability and a powerful caliber, turned out to be stronger than a complex, expensive, and fragile technological monster. The German machine broke not because it was unlucky. It broke because it was doomed back at the smelting furnace stage. War is not a parade on Unter den Linden, and not a drafting board in the sterile office of the Henschel Design Bureau. War is mud mixed with wet snow. It is roads smashed to bits that even a cart can't pass. It is a lack of spare parts and fuel diluted with water. And it is in this dirty, relentless reality that the real test of equipment happens. Here, in the swamps of Eastern Europe, two philosophies collide: German technical perfectionism and Soviet rough functionality. And the winner is not the one with more complex blueprints, but the one who starts in -30 degrees. The King Tiger is a laboratory monster, the pinnacle of engineering thought taken to absurdity. When you look at it in the hangar, it commands respect. Complex interleaved suspension providing a smooth ride so the gunner can aim on the move. Electric turret drive, multi-stage gearbox with pre-selector. It is a masterpiece of mechanics.
It is a Swiss watch, weighing 68 tons. But throw this watch into a bucket of Polish clay, and it stops. German engineers creating this tank forgot to ask their logistics officers how they intend to maintain it. Knipkamp's interleaved suspension is a mechanic's curse. Road wheels overlap each other in several rows. Mud packs between them, freezes into stone overnight, and in the morning the tank simply cannot move. To change one inner road wheel, the crew must remove 4 outer ones. This takes half a day. In combat conditions, when every minute is paid for with blood, such repairability is equivalent to a death sentence. The Tiger's transmission groans under its own weight. The 700 horsepower Maybach engine is forced to drag nearly 70 tons of dead weight. Final drives are the weakest link. They simply crumble from overloads when trying to turn in deep snow or mud. The tank kills itself even before meeting the enemy. Of 14 machines going on the march, 10 reach the battlefield. 4 stop on the roadside with breakdowns. This is the statistics of defeat. And now look at the IS-2. When you get up close, you see rough welds you can cut yourself on. You see casting flaws and mold marks on the turret. There is no aesthetics here. This is not a machine for parades. This is a sledgehammer, a crude, heavy tool for murder, forged in Ural factories by women and teenagers who stood on shell crates to reach the machines. But this sledgehammer has one advantage: it doesn't break. The heart of the IS-2 is the V2 diesel, simple as an axe. It traces its lineage to aircraft engines, but is derated and adapted to eat any diesel fuel. It has no finicky carburetors that get clogged with dust. It has high torque. It pulls 46 tons of weight confidently and reliably. 46 tons against 68. The Soviet tank is lighter than the German one by 22 tons. That is the weight of an entire medium tank. What does this mean in practice? It means the IS-2 crosses a wooden bridge under which the Tiger collapses into the river. It means the IS-2 crawls through a swamp where the Tiger sits on its belly and turns into a stationary target. The repairability of the IS-2 is a hymn to simplicity. If a Tiger's transmission breaks, it needs a factory workshop, a crane, and a team of specialists. If an IS-2 breaks a track or a road wheel jams, the crew fixes it with a sledgehammer, a crowbar, and a curse word, right in the field, knee-deep in mud. Access to aggregates is simple. Everything is made so that yesterday's peasant who became a driver could figure out the mechanism in a week. Logistics finishes off the Germans. The King Tiger guzzles gas by the bucket. 500 liters per 100 kilometers off-road. That is a tanker truck of fuel behind every platoon. And gasoline burns. One hit to the engine compartment, and gasoline vapors explode instantly. The IS-2 runs on diesel fuel. Diesel burns worse, it is not as explosive, and it is easier to find. In the Battle of Oględów, this engineering difference played a decisive role. German tanks trying to maneuver got stuck. Their engines overheated, attempting to pull the carcasses out of the trap. They lost speed, lost maneuverability. They became hostages of their mass and complexity. Soviet tanks retained dynamics. They could flank, retreat, change position. Their equipment worked as an extension of the crew's will, not as a capricious beast that must be wrestled with. This is the engineering dead end into which Germany drove itself. In pursuit of absolute protection and absolute power, they created a machine incompatible with the reality of war. They built a wonder weapon for a sterile world where there is no mud, no metal fatigue, and no supply errors. But war does not forgive idealism. In the dry residue, we have the following. The German tank is a masterpiece that dies from a speck of dust in a jet. The Soviet tank is a rough casting that continues to shoot even when pieces fall off it. Victory is not forged on a drafting table with a slide rule. Victory is gnawed out in a swamp, where what matters is not armor thickness in millimeters, but whether your tank can drive an extra kilometer and shoot back. The IS-2 could. The King Tiger was left to rust in Polish mud, a monument to the fact that complexity is the enemy of reliability. In war, the winner is the one who is simpler, the one who can be fixed with a hammer blow, the one who doesn't require a special grade of oil. In the duel of technologies, the philosophy of reliability won. And the Germans learned this lesson too late, when their spine had already cracked under the tracks of Soviet heavy tanks. The echo of shots near Oględów fades, but the seismic wave from this battle goes far beyond Poland. It rolls west, covers hundreds of kilometers, and strikes the foundation of the Reich itself. In Hitler's headquarters, in the smoke-filled offices of Berlin, where maps with impossible plans hang on the walls, something terrible is happening. Faith is collapsing there. The battle that happened in August of 1944 changes the rules of the game globally. Until this moment, the entire military machine of Germany held on one postulate: our quality beats their quantity. It was a religion. They believed that one German tank was worth 10 Soviet ones, that their optics, their steel, their engineering genius was an absolute value that could not be cancelled out. Oględów showed that this formula is wrong. The Wehrmacht's doctrine of qualitative superiority is destroyed. It burned along with 14 King Tigers in the Polish mud. Turns out, quality is not the complexity of the transmission and not the polishing of lenses. Quality in war is the ability to complete the mission and survive. And in this context, the rough Soviet IS-2 turned out to be higher quality than the jewelry-like German item. The reaction of the German command to this rout is hysteria masked as tactical wisdom. A directive is sent down to the troops, which is effectively an admission of defeat. The order reads, "Avoid direct duels with IS-2 tanks. Use ambushes. Act only with overwhelming numerical superiority, but under no circumstances engage in open, fair, head-on combat." Think about that. An army that 5 years ago rolled across Europe like a steamroller, an army that prided itself on its aggressiveness, now officially orders its elite units to hide. The Tiger, created as a dominant, as an alpha predator, is moved to the category of game that needs to be careful. This is checkmate. Inspector General of Tank Troops. Guderian reads reports from the front and understands. Parity is gone. The Russians created a tool that nullifies their technical achievements. German tankers, the elite of the Panzerwaffe, no longer feel like masters of the battlefield. Fear, which settled in their souls at Oględów, is now written into combat manuals. But Germany's losses in this battle are measured not only in burnt iron. These are losses of time and resources that are irreplaceable. Building one King Tiger costs 300,000 Reichsmarks and hundreds of thousands of man-hours.
It is scarce tungsten, molybdenum, manganese. It is the labor of highly qualified workers who are already in short supply because they are either at the front or under Allied bombs. Losing a battalion of such machines in a couple of days is an economic catastrophe. The Reich can no longer afford such luxury. Every destroyed Tiger is a hole in the budget that cannot be patched. While the Soviet Union churns out its tanks by the thousands, using simple, cheap labor and available materials, Germany drives itself into a dead end, creating artisanal masterpieces that live on the front less than their transport takes. Loss statistics at Oględów become a sentence for German industry. Investment efficiency tends to zero. Costs are colossal. The output, burning wrecks. War has moved into a phase where the economics of destruction wins. A Soviet shell costing a few hundred rubles destroys a German machine worth a fortune. This exchange rate is lethal for the Reich's economy. Oględów became the point of no return. The Germans lost the initiative not tactically, but mentally. They realized their wonder weapon didn't work. Hitler hoped the appearance of King Tigers would turn the tide of the war, stop the Red Avalanche. But the avalanche simply ground these stones down and moved on. Now German commanders are forced to change tactics. Instead of breakthroughs and pincers, deep defense. Instead of brazen attacks, shooting from around the corner and running. The IS-2 drove the German beast into a hole. The strategic significance of this battle cannot be overestimated. It was the collapse of an illusion. The illusion that technology can be opposed to physics, and Aryan theory to the harsh reality of war. The Germans lost this battle in their heads even before they drove onto the field. They believed their own propaganda about invulnerability. And when the smoke cleared, it turned out the emperor had no clothes. And this naked emperor is burning with a bright flame in the middle of a foreign land. The world saw that the German tank can and must be beaten, that there are no invincible monsters. There is just a target with thick armor, but with a vulnerable heart. And the Red Army has the key to this heart, 122 millimeters of steel and fury. From this moment, the road to Berlin became not just a direction of attack. It became a path cleared by heavy IS-2 shells. The German machine still snaps back, still bites. But its spine was broken right here, when the first King Tiger lost its turret from the blow of a Soviet sledgehammer. The realization of powerlessness is the most terrible enemy, and now this enemy sits in every German tank, corroding the crew's will faster than rust. 80 years later, the iron has cooled completely. Now it doesn't burn hands, it chills them with museum sterility. Those same King Tigers that in August 1944 made the earth tremble near Oględów have today turned into rare exhibits. Only a few remain. They stand in Saumur, in Bovington, in Kubinka. They are cleaned, painted, fenced off with velvet ropes. Tourists look at them with awe, clicking camera shutters, admiring the power and size.
But if you approach this tank closely, if you listen to the silence of the hangar, you can hear not greatness, but the echo of ambitions that led an entire nation into a dead end. The King Tiger today is a monument to technical narcissism. It is a symbol of how one can spend colossal resources creating the perfect death machine, which turned out to be useless in the face of harsh reality. It stands here, huge and menacing, but it is a dead giant. Its armor, those same 180 millimeters, now protects only the emptiness inside the fighting compartment. And somewhere on pedestals, under rain and snow, stand other machines. IS-2 tanks. There are many of them. They stand in Berlin, in small Polish towns, in Russian villages. Their armor is rough. On the casting, traces of molds are visible. Welds are uneven like scars. They don't look like jewelry. They look like workers. Like veterans who don't like to talk about the war, but whose hands remember the weight of a sledgehammer. The IS-2 is a tank that didn't just win the duel at Oględów. It is the tank that entered Berlin. Its tracks, clanking on the cobblestones of the German capital, put the final period in humanity's most terrible war. It became the material embodiment of retribution and liberation. Not elegant, not perfect, but absolutely effective. The fates of the people who burned and killed in these boxes turned out differently. German crews, those lucky enough to survive that hell, dissolved into post-war life. Some became clerks, some engineers, some drank themselves to death trying to drown out with schnapps the memories of how their invulnerable machines blew apart. For them, Oględów remained a nightmare, the moment when their faith in superiority was trampled. Lieutenant Vasily Udalov, that surgeon of tank warfare, went through the war to the end. He didn't become a media star.
Heroes of that war rarely sought fame. They just did their job. For Udalov and his crew, the Battle of August 11th was just one of the days. A heavy, dirty, dangerous day when you had to survive and win. They didn't think about making history. They thought about how to calculate lead correctly and how to reload the gun faster. But it was at this point, on a nameless field in Poland, that their fates crossed to teach us a lesson. We often fetishize technology. We look at armor thickness, at calibers, at horsepower. We argue whose tank was cooler on paper. But history laughs at these arguments. History knows the truth. The winner is not the one with the longer barrel or thicker steel. The winner is the one with stronger nerves. On that day at Oględów, it wasn't just the D-25T gun that won. The steel will of people who were not afraid of monsters won. The IS-2 crews knew the enemy was strong. They knew the Tiger was dangerous. But they didn't let fear paralyze their will. They turned their fear into cold calculation, into precision of movement, into reaction speed. Technical superiority is a myth. It is a crutch for the weak in spirit. No armor, even the most perfect, will save you if the crew inside has already lost the battle in their heads. And no equipment, even the roughest, will let you down if it is operated by people ready to go to the end. King Tigers are rusting. Their time has passed. They remained in the past as an example of a dead-end branch of war evolution. But the IS-2 remained in eternity. Not as a machine, but as a symbol. A symbol that simple brute force, directed by unbending will, is capable of breaking the spine of any, even the most high-tech beast. Rust eats metal. Time erases names. But the essence remains unchanged. War is not a competition of engineers. War is a battle of characters. And when you look at black and white photos of those years, where a soot-stained Soviet tanker stands against the background of a burning German wonder weapon, remember, the armor was not pierced by a shell. The armor was pierced by a man. A man who knew that behind his back there was no room for retreat, and ahead, only the enemy who had to be destroyed. This is the main truth about war. Everything else is just physics.